How far would you go to avoid paying your debts? I'm Alex Carter, crime reporter, and the call came in just before 11 p.m. House fire at 16 Fathoms Drive, Shoney, possible victims trapped inside. I'd covered my share of blazes, but something about the dispatcher's tone made me hurry. When I pulled up, the two-story home was a blazing silhouette against a smoky sky. Fire trucks lined the quiet street, their sirens stilled, lights dancing over lace curtains and maple trees. Neighbors in nightclothes clustered at the curb, some held trembling blankets around their shoulders. A firefighter waved me under the tape. Interior's clear. We've got 6 victims, 5 children, and their mother pulled out, all alive. The father's on the porch. Inside, the living room was unrecognizable. Soot-black walls and melted drapes, a piano warped by heat, and charred toys scattered across the floor. In the kitchen, half-melted plastic plates lay amidst fallen ceiling plaster. Down the hall, I spotted splashes of deep red on the walls and carpet, too vivid for just smoke damage. A medical tech hovered over a little body blanket, checking vitals on a 9-year-old girl. "Slash wounds," she murmured, loading the child onto a gurney. Outside, I found Matthew Richards seated rigidly on the front stoop, unburned and unshaken, hands clasped around a worn Bible. His pastor's collar lay against his ash-streaked shirt. 5 firemen knelt at his feet, tending to a woman, his wife Emma, her nightgown torn, her face streaked with soot and tears. Each child lay on a stretcher, their faces pale, breathing shallow but steady. No one had expected survivors. Neighbors described the Richardses as Shoney's model family. Matthew taught English at the local high school by day and led Sunday services. Emma coordinated the church nursery and cleaned house for extra spending money. Their 5 children, ages 6 through 14, performed in the choir and joined youth sports teams. No one imagined them wedged between flames and steel beams. A detective pointed out the back door. The latch had been jammed from the inside. "No one else could have set this fire or dragged those blankets," he said quietly. On the porch, I spotted a kitchen knife, its blade stained dark, handle scuffed. I tucked on latex gloves and photographed the scene. Burn patterns riddled like veins, a trail of muddy footprints leading from the master bedroom, and a length of jagged rope caught on a broken shutter. As I stepped back under the flashing lights, the magnitude hit me. A house fire that almost killed 6 innocents, and evidence of a violent hand guiding the flames. This wasn't an accident. Something horrendous had happened behind those locked doors. I spent the next morning tracing the Richardses' footsteps before the blaze, hunting for the fault lines beneath their sterling reputation. Shoney is a place where Sunday potlucks and youth choirs define normal, and Matthew Richards and his family epitomized it. At Shoney First Baptist, families greeted one another in the foyer, paper coffee cups in hand. Joan Potter, the youth choir coordinator, waved me over. "Matt is everyone's go-to guy," she said. "He taught our teens, led the choir, hosted Bible studies. He never missed a bake sale or a prayer meeting." Across the room, Emma Richards arranged toy blocks for Sunday school, her laughter ringing like church bells. But when I visited Jefferson High later, where Matthew taught English, the veneer cracked. His classroom still bore motivational posters, "Find your voice, turn pages into purpose," but students spoke in hushes about unsettling moments. He'd pause mid-sentence, "Just stare out the window," one senior confided. He looked like he was wrestling with something he couldn't face. Another student recalled hearing Richards mutter, "We can't lose everything," before snapping a book shut. Back at the charred remains of 16 Fathoms Drive, I rifled through the rubble of Matthew's home office. Among scorched books and melted pins, I uncovered a half-burned envelope, its corner legible. "Notice of eviction, vacate by October 1st. The rest was consumed by flames, but the deadline was clear. Richards had hidden the notice, searing it in his desk drawer to keep his wife and children in the dark. Neighbors offered more clues. Across the street, retired banker Harold Dixon recalled spotting Matthews Richards pacing his porch late one September evening, an eviction notice clutched in his hand, tears glinting in the porch light. "He looked like a man at war with himself," Dixon said. He slammed the door, then turned back as if deciding to face his demons alone. That evening, I sat in Richards's now empty study, spreading out documents on a soot-smeared table. A stack of past-due mortgage statements revealed arrears over $40,000. Credit card bills showed minimum payments missed for months. And a bank ledger, stained by smoke, traced Richards's late-night withdrawals at ATMs across town. It painted a portrait of a man drowning in debt, determined to shoulder the burden alone. As I left the wreckage, I realized Matthew Richards' secret fear had been more than financial. It was shame. He'd kept Emma and their 5 children oblivious until the last moment, believing panic would destroy them. But in hiding the eviction notice, he sealed the fate of the family's trust and set the stage for the night when desperation would boil over into violence. By mid-October, the pieces of Matthew Richards' private torment began to surface. The burned eviction notice hinted at financial ruin, but I needed to know how the town's most trusted pastor spiraled into such desperation. My first stop was the Johnson County Clerk's office, where public records revealed a frantic flurry of activity in September 2023. Richards had filed a last-ditch modification request on his mortgage, papers stamped, received, September 8, 2023, but the lender denied relief just days later. He refiled bankruptcy paperwork on the 12th, only to have it dismissed on a technicality. The official record flatly stated, "Case closed, insufficient filing fee." It wasn't until the 14th, 2 days before the fire, that he penned a handwritten letter to his bank pleading, "Please, do not force my family into homelessness." Back in my newsroom, I spent the afternoon on the phone with Sarah Klein, a housing counselor at the Shoney Community Outreach Center. She recalled Richards' shadowy visits. He came alone, late in the evening. He was polite but withdrawn. Eyes darting, voice hushed. He asked if there were emergency grants or rental assistance, then nodded when I told him everything was tapped out. Klein paused, voice softening. He left with a frown, clutching his coat like armor. That evening, I traced Matthew's ATM withdrawals. 3 trips on September 14th to machines at convenience stores well after midnight. I drove those dimly lit streets, the neon gas station sign flickering overhead, and found the exact spot, a rusted Redbox kiosk and a lone bench. I photographed scuffed gravel and the ATM's smeared keypad, imagining Richard standing there, adrenaline flooding his veins as he withdrew every cent he could. In the hush of my apartment late that night, I studied an email chain recovered by investigators, emails Richards had drafted but never sent. One entitled, "Help My Family Read." "I'm drowning. We have until October 1st. I have nowhere else to turn. I'm sorry to burden you, but we need assistance or we'll lose everything." Further down, a reply from a church elder sat unsent in Richards' drafts folder. "Matt, I'll cover next month's mortgage. Promise. Stay strong." But Richards never pressed send. His shame outweighed his instinct to confess. In my recorder, I whispered, "A man who refuses help," a silent plea he never voiced. 5 children he tried to shield from truth. Matthew Richards had barricaded his family from panic, but in doing so, he imprisoned them in his unraveling mind. Later, as I reviewed my notes, I saw a pattern in Richards' desperate acts. For each denial, bank, counselor, church, he retreated further into secrecy. No late-night call to Emma, no shared burden at the dinner table. His isolation became a pressure cooker, and by setting fire to the home he'd sworn to protect, he believed he could eliminate both debt and disgrace in a single, destructive act. To understand how desperation turned deadly on September 15th to 16th, I went straight to the 911 recordings and spoke with every witness available. What unfolds is a nightmare waltzing with fire and steel in a home meant to shelter 5 children and their mother. 10:02 p.m., the first 911 call crackled through, a frightened child's voice. Barely more than a whisper. "The house, it's on fire. Deadlock the doors. Help us." Dispatch logged the address, 16 Fathoms Drive. 10:05 p.m., minutes later, neighbors reported seeing flickering orange light pouring from the living room windows. A father, in this case, Matthew Richards, had sealed every exit, deadbolt snapped, chain locks engaged, and a heavy dresser pushed against the back door. Inside the home, Richards poured gasoline along the baseboards and tossed a lit rag into the sofa cushions. Flames roared to life in the living room, licking up the drapes and sending plumes of toxic smoke toward the ceiling vents. Richards stood back, breathing heavily, as the fire consumed the heart of his family's sanctuary. He then retrieved a large kitchen knife from the drawer. According to a neighbor's later statement, he wandered down the hallway, blade in hand, as the children's terrified screams echoed through the smoke, raw, urgent cries that pierced even the roar of the flames. 10:10 p.m., Emma Richards, awakened by the sound of glass shattering, bolted from her bedroom. She charged through the inferno, its heat scorching her hair and nightgown, toward her children's bedrooms. Smoke stung her eyes, but maternal instinct drove her on. She found her 6-year-old daughter huddled beneath a metal bed frame, her older sons coughing against the door. Richards loomed behind them, knife raised, his face a mask of anguish and determined derangement. Emma didn't hesitate. She threw her body between her children and her husband, wrestling the blade upward as the youngest clung to her legs. Sparks crackled overhead as the ceiling collapsed in a shower of embers. Emma's arms bore deep slashes, but she held her stance, forcing Richards backward until his momentum carried him into the hallway. 10:12 p.m. Fire crews burst through the front door, hoses spewing water, axes in hand. They formed two rescue teams, one to carry Emma and the children out, and one to confront Richards. Paramedics loaded the injured Richards' children onto stretchers, their small bodies drenched with water and soot, breathing ragged but alive. 10:14 p.m. In the kitchen, firefighters found Matthew Richards slumped on the charred linoleum, knife in hand, staring vacantly at the scorched walls. He made no move to flee or fight. Instead, he seemed frozen, numb to the horror surrounding him. A captain carefully pried the blade from his fingers and read him his rights as Richards murmured, I tried to save them." By 10:20 p.m., all 6 Richards family members were in ambulances, bound for the hospital with life-threatening injuries. Richards himself was handcuffed on the porch, soot staining his collar, his eyes haunted by the act he had just committed. Reliving these moments, I felt the weight of each second. A father's betrayal sealed behind locked doors, a mother's bravery shining through smoke and blade, and firefighters who entered the flames to pull 6 souls from death's grasp. I tracked Matthew Richards to the cold, linoleum-floored hallway of St. Mary's Regional Medical Center, where his cuffs had been loosened and he sat pale and bandaged against the wall. Nurses wheeled stretchers past him, each carrying a Richards child or his wife Emma, their gurneys draped in foil blankets. I showed my badge and slipped in beside Detective Ramirez, who offered a nod of permission. Ramirez flipped open his notebook. "Mr. Richards, let's go through what happened." Richards stared at the scuffed floor, hands curled in his lap. When Ramirez pushed, Richards exhaled, voice calm and low. "I wanted to save them from eviction. I thought, if I ended everything quickly, they'd never have to face that shame." The words hung between us like ash. A pastor and teacher reduced to a suicide note of mercy killing. I pressed record on my digital recorder. His eyes lifted to mine. "I thought I was sparing them, but I nearly killed them all." Across the hall, a medical tech loaded a 9-year-old Richards' daughter into an ICU room. A nurse rushed past with a 5-year-old son on oxygen. Emma Richards' door stood open, revealing her sitting propped up in a bed, arms and torso bandaged, tear tracks dark on her soot-streaked cheeks. Each hallway corner echoed with beeping monitors and hushed prayers. Later, I joined Chief Deputy Todd Harrison in the precinct briefing room. He spread out the charges: 9 counts of attempted murder, 1 for each family member, and 1 count of first-degree arson. "We've got burn pattern analysis showing accelerant poured in the living room, knife wound forensic reports matching the blade recovered on the porch, and Mr. Richards' own confession." He tapped a chart of entry bar marks on every door. This was planned and executed with intent. I spent the next days following the Richards family's progress. Updates from the pediatric ICU, Emma's surgeries for deep lacerations, and the children's slow march back from critical condition. A GoFundMe page raised more than $200,000 in relief funds. Neighbors delivered casseroles. Church members organized round-the-clock childcare for Emma's elderly parents to visit. In the hushed corridors of care, I heard soft murmurs of forgiveness and prayer for healing, but also whispered fears that the family might never be the same. As I filed my report, pastor's confession, I tried to save them from shame. I realized Richards' tragic rationale would join the evidence in court. But in that hospital hallway, the real consequence lay not in his cuffs, but in the scars, physical and emotional, that would mark his family forever. On March 26, 2025, I sat in Johnson County Superior Court as the Richards case reached its climax. The gallery was packed, church members in suits, neighbors clutching tissues, and 5 carpet-bagged attorneys jockeying for seats. Judge Marianne Coulter presided from her bench, gavel at the ready. Richards, lean and cagey from months in jail, rose to enter his plea. In a voice strained but clear, he said, "Guilty." His admissions to 6 counts of attempted murder and arson brought a hush over the room. Prosecutor Maria Jensen outlined the timeline and the horror: locked doors, gasoline trails, knife wounds, the children's 911 call, the blueprint of a desperate man's descent into violence. Defense attorney John Kessler appealed to Richards's honorable intent, urging mercy for a man crippled by shame. Richards himself addressed the court. "I was paralyzed by fear and pride. I thought I was sparing my family from humiliation. I was wrong. I am so sorry." When Judge Coulter spoke, her words carried both gravity and compassion. "Mr. Richards, you betrayed the most sacred trust, yet you spared their lives at the last moment. In weighing your actions and admissions, this court sentences you to 29 years and 5 months in state prison, time that I hope allows for reflection and perhaps rehabilitation." Outside the courthouse, Emma Richards emerged under a spring sun, flanked by her 5 children, now healed enough to walk on their own. Reporters swarmed, but Emma reached for a microphone, voice steady. "We forgive Matthew, but we won't forget how close we came to losing everything." At Shoney First Baptist that Sunday, the pews held a community in quiet afterthought. The choir sang a new hymn about grace and vulnerability. Parishioners spoke of tightening their own circles, checking in on struggling neighbors, offering help before pride could take root. In the months since, I've checked on the Richards children, now thriving in school music programs, and Emma, who launched a Breaking Silence support group for families facing financial crisis. Their resilience stands as a testament to survival and forgiveness. As I close my notebook one last time on this case, I reflect on the corrosive power of hidden shame. Matthew Richards believed he bore the burden alone and nearly destroyed the family he loved. His sentence will unfold in prison cells, but the true justice lies in the lessons he could not learn until it was almost too late, that pride must never silence the cry for help.